the ASM brand name creation process. In this lesson, you're going to discover how to choose your brand name and also how to find out if it is available or not. So the secrets of a great brand name. Firstly, it should be market related. In other words, it relates to your brand of products. Next, you need to make sure it does not restrict your choice of future products. And if possible, it should be somewhat benefit driven. And you should try and make sure it passes the phone test. And lastly, that it is available online. So your brand name should be related to your market. For example, a fitness related brand. If you were looking at choosing fitness related products, then it could be something like Golden Age Athletics or Elite Athletics. But looking at these two examples, they are very different. Golden Age Athletics would imply that the brand is related to products for older people. And Elite Athletics might imply that it was only for advanced users. So you need to examine your market or niche and make sure you know who you are going to be selling to. So write down who you think your product or brand is for. Your future products. Your brand name should be applicable to any future products you may add. Remember, you will be adding more and more products as your business grows. So for example, let's look at some potential yoga brands. You might have yoga mats for you, yoga for you, or bear movement. Now, if you look at these three brand names, yoga mats for you is going to restrict your products for the future because it's implying it's mainly about yoga mats. Now, you still might be able to add other yoga type accessories, but it sends a message to your customers that your brand is focused on yoga mats. The second one, yoga for you, is broader, but again, it's restricted just to yoga. And while there might be a lot of products out there related to yoga, there are also other related niches that you might want to include products from. So the last one, bear movement, is a much broader name. And most people might assume it's to do with yoga, but also a multitude of other exercise or relaxation forms. So do keep your options open. Do not restrict your brand too much with the name. Benefit driven. So if possible, the name should make you feel a positive emotion. Now, this might not always be possible depending on your niche. For example, a beauty brand, Glowing Goddess versus Skin Cream Warehouse. The Glowing Goddess name is much more emotion evoking than Skin Cream Warehouse. Now, this is not always possible, and especially in certain niches. But if possible, you want a brand name that is benefit driven or evokes a positive response. Now, this is not the most critical aspect of a brand name, but it can be very beneficial. The phone test. The name should be easily recognizable. Preferably, it should be short, easy to spell, pronounce, and remember. For example, Ingenious Innovations versus Smart Solutions. Smart Solutions is much easier to spell and much easier to remember. And it's also much easier to pronounce. Now again, while this can be very beneficial, it is not critical. An example might be Walmart. Most people who'd never heard of them would think it was spelt with 2 L's. So when you come up with your brand name, call friends and put it to the test. And this is also a good way of just seeing what your friends and family think of the brand name itself. Now lastly is available online. You are going to want your brand name as a domain, and this is simple to find out online. You also want to check your brand name is not already in existence. And lastly, you also want to make sure your brand is not trademarked. So let's go online and see how we do this. Now we're going to start off using this pretty cool site that actually helps you find a brand name. Now if you've got a really creative mind and you can come up with a brand name yourself, that's cool. But this site can really help you. And the site is called leandomainsearch.com. That's L-E-A-N, domainsearch.com. Now in future training, I'm going to be using a bike pump as an example product. So if I was going to be selling bike related items, I could put bike into this search, or even bicycle, but I'll just do a quick search. And you can see it brings up all these names that could be potential brands for you. But if you remember, we talked about not narrowing down the number of choices we might have in the future. So bike might do that. So instead, I'm going to use outdoor and we'll see what we can find. So as you can see, it's found 2,287 domain names that are available with the word outdoor in it. So you can start looking through all these. Now they do have sorting options. You can see up here on the left, popularity, length, alphabetical. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to search by starts with search term. So in other words, it's going to find me domain names that start with outdoor. And then what you can do next is then search by length. So it's going to give you all the shortest names first. And remember, for a brand name, if we can find an acceptable brand name that is short, then so much the better. But let's have a look. I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out at me in this first section, which has obviously got 3-letter words behind it. Outdoor Zap, that's quite interesting, it's quite catchy, but doesn't really ring true for me to be a brand selling outdoor goods. Outdoor Echo, that's quite interesting. Just scrolling through to look for different names and something that jumps out at me. Outdoor Rich, well, consider my name's Rich, that'd be quite cool. But again, it's not striking me as the type of name that would be a brand selling products for the outdoors. Outdoor Ahead, I actually quite like that one. And if you see one you like, all you need to do is click on it. And you get this pop-up, and you can see it says outdoorahead.com is still available. And you'll also notice it's telling you the name is available on Twitter, which is also a good sign. But I'm just going to see if I can find anything better. And we're actually going to be looking at social sites too in a second. But let me just close that. Outdoor Hyper, again, that's quite interesting. Outdoor Omega. Outdoor Always, that's quite interesting. Now, Outdoor Muscle is fairly interesting. A lot of people use riding bikes to build muscle. But again, it does restrict us a little bit because outdoor gives us such a big range of products to choose from. So I'm going to keep scrolling down. Outdoor Advanced, that's quite a decent one. I actually like Outdoor Optimal, and you can see it's still available. The Twitter name's available, so again, that's a good sign. Outdoor Optimum, Outdoor Optimal, they're both pretty decent. Now, I actually paused the video, and the one I'm going to go with is Outdoor Squared. If I click on it, you can see the domain name's available, and it's available on Twitter. And the fact it's available on Twitter is also a good sign. But speaking of Twitter, we can actually check the social sites. I'm just going to copy Outdoor Squared, which is the brand name I've chosen, and I'm going to go to namechecker.com. And as you can see, it's name, and then the checker is spelled without the E. So name, and then checkr.com. And I'm going to paste that brand name in, and you want to paste whatever brand name you come up with without a space and click search. And it's showing me that the vast majority of the sites are available. And this is another good sign that no one is using our brand, but we are going to be doing some more checks in a second. Now you'll notice it says Twitter's unavailable. Now this could actually be an error. It's unusual for the previous site to show it as available and for it not to be available. And if I click on it, you can see that page doesn't exist, which means no one's got it. Now, as far as I remember, you are allowed 15 characters for your Twitter username, and we've got 14 here. However, worst case scenario, if the Twitter name isn't available, it's not the most crucial one. The most crucial one you always want is Facebook. So if we go back, we can see we've got Facebook, and it's also confirming we could have the domain name. The Google account's available. So Twitter not being available isn't as critical because we can use some kind of variation to get it if we have to do that. But it's just a quick way of looking at all the different social sites. And normally if you see it's available everywhere, that's a pretty good site for your brand name not existing. However, we can take it a step further to check. And to do that, we're going to go to our old favorite, the USPTO government site. And I'll put the URL on the page, but you will find it in the training guide that you can download below this lesson. But once you come to this page, if you scroll down, there's some interesting information. There's a video about doing trademark searches, but we're going to click on TESS, T-E-S-S right here. And to find this, you can also go do a Google search for TESS trademark search. Now, before I go any further, the same disclaimer applies here. I'm not a trademark attorney. What I'm going to show you right now is for your own informational purposes only. If you have any concerns about anything at all to do with a brand name being trademarked, then consult a trademark attorney. But I'm going to click on TESS, and then I'm going to click on Basic Word Mark Search, New User. And then I'm going to put Outdoor Squared, which is the brand name I found, into the search term. And then I'm going to click on Submit Query. Now, as you can see, it's showing no records, which is another good sign. But I'm just going to go back by clicking on the back button. And I'm just going to use another example. And if you remember, one of the examples we used earlier was Glowing Goddess. Put that in and we'll click on Submit Query. And we've got two results. You can see Glowing Goddess Maternity, and it's saying dead. And Glowing Goddess itself is saying dead. So if I was to click on that, you can see that this has been abandoned. Now, that doesn't automatically mean it's okay to go ahead. And again, it's something you should look into more closely. And the next way we're going to look to see if our brand name is in use is to go to Google. Now I'm actually going to use the Glowing Goddess one and search, and you'll see we're starting to get results. You see this Glowing Goddess Luminizer, so that might be a bit of a worry. You can also see Glowing Goddess's Facebook page. We've got a Golden Goddess Luminizer, and I think this might actually be a product name rather than a brand name, but it still would be an issue. And if we go down even further, you can see Jennifer Lopez Glowing Goddess perfume review. The fact Glowing Goddess is associated with such a high profile person as Jennifer Lopez, I would go running. I would definitely not use it. But you can always go and look at these. For instance, I could click on this result. And there you go. You can see it does look like the product name as opposed to the brand name. But it is still something that would make me think twice about using that as a brand name. But how about we check out the outdoors one we found? And if you remember, it was outdoor squared. Media squared outdoors, so that's different. The words are in a different order. And in fact, what I forgot to say is we should put this search in quotes, which means it will only show us results that are in order. I'm seeing one result here, outdoor squared corners chair cushion. Let's have a look at that one. But as you can see, that's not a brand name. And I'm not seeing anything jumping out at me for this name. So I'm actually pretty confident at this point that outdoor squared is okay. So if you do find a domain name that you like and it looks all okay and you've checked the trademark and you're pretty sure that you're not going to have an issue using it, the domain name's available, the social media sites, they're all available, then you should go ahead and register it. At the end of the day, it's only going to cost you about $10, and even if you decide to change the brand name later, it's still only $10 you've invested. So I'm just using Namecheap. It's my favorite registrar. I've been using them for years. So I've put in outdoorsquared.com and I'm going to click on search. And there you can see it's available. So I would just go ahead and buy this. But that is essentially how you start looking for your brand name and how you check that it's available to you. So in this lesson, we have covered how to choose your brand name and how to check that it's available. In the next lesson, you will learn the importance of your logo and how to get it created. Your action step, start searching and find your brand name. But that's it for this lesson. Take care.